Welcome back to our channel. I want to thank you for watching. There's been lots of development in the country of Tanzania at the moment, and I must say that Tanzania is the latest disgrace in the continent of Africa if we consider what is happening in the internal issues regards to the country of Tanzania at the moment. Tanzania was considered to be a beacon of democracy in the continent of Africa, has gone from grace to grass. So it's embarrassing, as you all see in the video. I don't know why some governments do not accept this whole thing called democracy. Does it really exist at the moment? That we've seen shameful and embarrassing situation in Central Africa at the moment. A number of those countries are, more importantly, looking at Tanzania post-election violence. Media is reporting that, according to opposition, that over 700 people at this particular situation have lost their own lives, and more importantly, the violence continues. So it is shameful, and you find some leaders going ahead cutting off internet. Tanzania must be embarrassed at this stage, and I think that this goes the long way what we've been talking about. I have two very important videos to play. First, we'll look at DWTV, and then we will come into looking at how Aljazeera actually is proving out that there is not going to be any easy push with regards to the situation in Tanzania. Let's play this clip.
Now to Tanzania, where authorities have imposed curfews and an internet blackout as post-election protests sweep the country. Demonstrators have clashed with police in several cities following Wednesday's general election. They say the result is unfair after the president's main challengers were excluded from the ballot. The internet blackout is raising concerns about the ability to get reliable information about what's actually happening on the ground. Our correspondent Stella Anoko reports from neighbouring Kenya.
There's a media blackout in Tanzania since Wednesday the 29th, when protests erupted on polling day. While internet and mobile phone networks were shut down, footage of protests trickled in and started trending on social media. The problem, there are few journalists on the ground and not enough information to verify all the videos.
So, if you fail to recognize economic development, looking at the basic fundamentals to improve the system, the inclusivity, putting in every community, every particular difficulties and challenges happening in the country, and you want to consolidate power alone and sit on top of the world, this is what you get, because people are facing difficulties in their homes, their families, their own individual challenges that they are going through. And without allowing them to communicate properly, to speak freely, and ensuring that the economic difficulties and allowing a particular freedom of communication where you allow government opposition to talk on issues that are also relevant. And this government don't want the opposition to communicate, to speak, because most of this government eat fat and just sit on the table and do nothing for the people. Let's play this clip.
Police have struggled to contain the protests in towns and cities across Tanzania. They erupted on Wednesday during polling for Tanzania's general elections, which political opposition say are a sham. Demonstrators have been calling for electoral reforms and for President Samia Suluhu Hassan to step down. The Chadema opposition party, which was barred from running, says its network of representatives has counted cases of around 700 protesters and more than a dozen police officers who've been killed in the violence across the country.
I think the number could even be higher. The police are shooting, aiming at demonstrators, and in fact, the response from the government is emboldening the demonstrators.
Tanzania is an embarrassment at the moment globally, and I think that the current leader in Tanzania, or what's happening in terms of the post-election situation, it's been a shame so far. And I think African countries, I wonder where are the different partners who once look at Tanzania to be a country where it could be considered in a number of ways. Of course, every country has its own challenges, but I think it's embarrassing to see Tanzania the way it is at the moment, and all of these destructions, all of these post-election situation. This is not just normal. People are going through difficulties, and countries are emerging, countries are transforming. So, and countries are going through a situation where it cannot just be fixed with regards to what some of these leaders who've been in power and who does not want to accept a particular process where you could allow the opposition parties to come up and talk about situations which are affecting the ordinary people. If a few are sitting on top of the throne and don't want the others to communicate, to come and bring the problem for the people, then this is what you get.
There are only a handful of accounts of human rights activists, for example, updating information on Tanzania constantly. And so we've partly been relying on seeing videos like this from social media and trying to verify them. But it's been difficult to do this because it's been difficult to reach local journalists, for example, because many of them are stuck at home and because of the internet blackout, they're not reachable. Figures published of the injured and the number of deaths vary on a huge scale. The UN was able to confirm a number of deaths, but rights groups believe there could be many more.
We are alarmed by the deaths and injuries that have occurred in the ongoing election-related protests in Tanzania. Credible reports we have received indicate that at least 10 people were killed in Dar es Salaam, Shinyanga, and Morogoro as the security forces used firearms and tear gas to disperse protesters.
So that's Tanzania for you. And some of these leaders always weaponize the internet, and they are afraid for free communications. They are afraid on social media. I wonder what they think about this. Even people who invented these social media issues cannot control it. And we've seen this in Gabon. We've seen this in a number of countries. President threatened to cut off the internet because they want to control the information super highway. So it's embarrassing for Tanzania. And I saw the United Nations always come up and throw those silly comments and condemnation that has nothing to do to solve the problem. So this is the situation. So the Tanzanian people, they are not foolish. They are going through challenges, and it's a cabal of few leaders who are officials who always sit at the top to benefit for themselves and allow the masses to say, so if you cannot meet the difficulties that your people are facing, you're going to be going through this and you experience this, because the level of corruption and thievery is alarming. Let's play this clip.
Restrictions on rights groups, the press and the internet have made it difficult to verify information. Clashes between police and protesters on Tanzania's border with Kenya brought trade to a standstill.
We are not able to operate businesses because of the elections in Tanzania. The Tanzanian police are lobbing tear gas at us. Now we have nothing to feed our kids.
About 1,000 kilometers to the south, on Tanzania's border with Malawi, protesters burned the Casamulu border post. Demonstrators have targeted government buildings and businesses owned by officials of the ruling CCM party. It's ruled Tanzania for nearly half a century. Before the polls, President Samia told young people not to take to the streets. It didn't work. Protests like this are unprecedented in Tanzania. Rights groups say years of repression have grown worse in recent months. They say dozens of people have been arrested, killed or disappeared. The demonstrators say they've had enough.
Why would they not have enough? They must have enough because it's a system that's not transparent. It's a system that is built for a few. This grows across the board. As you see there, the officials, the companies, businesses are going down. And a few people in Tanzania have consolidated the world, and they are using it for their own personal gains and allowing the masses to struggle. So these are the problems that are being faced, and no one talks about it. And when you come to the point where the people have had these bent up challenges, they have no other option but to have the outburst. So for the Tanzanian officials, we have a video that will be coming up that the Tanzanian foreign minister also went to BBC and was talking some trash there. So I think this is truly trash talking, and you will not even have the exact figure of the number of people that have lost their own particular life in this situation. And some experts are saying that the figures are more higher. Some even put it to over 700, like I've just pointed out. So Tanzania must be at the lowest end of its own particular survivor. Let's play this clip.
This human rights lawyer in Tanzania said he'd heard of several deaths and is working to confirm more cases. The government, he said, would probably not acknowledge these deaths. We are hiding his identity for his security.
We think that it won't acknowledge. But however, the government must act in the interest of the people. So it is the people that will now come to check the government. Say, hey, come on, I lost my relative. I lost my friend. I lost a co-worker in the protests.
Local broadcasters have not been able to report, and the government itself has simply issued a security warning, not acknowledging the scale of the protests. Tanzania has not seen protests on this scale before, and human rights groups are calling on the government to practice restraint.
Well, Nicodemus Minda is a researcher with the Institute for Security Studies in Nairobi. Welcome to DW. Are the streets now calm?
Not yet. The situation is still very grave, and of course, with the widespread internet shutdown and media, almost media shutdown as well, the situation is still grave, and with a lot of military and security presence in the streets. But there are also many pockets of violence and protests that are still ongoing across the country.
So what does it tell us that so many people are still out on the streets, despite the presence of the military and despite these reports of hundreds of deaths?
Well, the protesters have been demanding, they have been, the elections. They didn't want the elections to proceed as they were. We saw a situation where the elections were conducted with the absence of the top opposition parties, the two main opposition parties. So the protesters are were demanding for the elections not to proceed as they were, but the government proceeded with the elections. So this is one of the grievances of the elections, but there are also other grievances that the protesters also have, including rampant corruption and of course many people missing as a result of government abduction and enforced disappearances of dissenters to the government of Tanzania.
So what could the government offer these protesters that would satisfy them?
Actually, now it's quite difficult because at one point the Electoral Commission continued announcing the results, which has further aggravated many of the protesters. But again, the country being without internet for 2 days now also further aggravates the situation. So the protesters are just demanding for free and fair elections, which the elections were not. And of course, there is also concern that there was low voter turnout. And we all know that the protesters really invaded polling stations, banning of government facilities and petrol station, and including vandalism of public property as well.
I want to thank you for watching. Let me know in the comment section what you think regards to the reason why the people of Tanzania have gotten enough from this kind of administration that to an extent was being seen globally as an administration that was meant for the Tanzanian people. But again, the bubble has burst and the Tanzanian people has woken up. I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.